Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kellie and Gail. This is episode 38. So there's some projects that Kellie and I have going on that we wanted to tell you guys about. We are teaching a class that starts towards the end of next week for 5 weeks. If anyone is interested, please reach out to Kellie or myself, and we would be happy to have you take the class with us. It's called Awaken Your Intuition.
I think that's something a lot of people need right now.
Mhm.
Um, Energies have been all over the place, and a lot of people are waking up and not sure what's happening to them. We talk about the ascension flu all the time, but we really don't talk about what exactly it is. And I think a lot of people are having the same things happening. People talking about time is just flying by. They
Mm.
lose track of time. They're not sure what they're doing. They'll be working on a project, and all of a sudden, in the middle of it, they're 5,000 miles away.
Mhm.
I've had several people in the last month, especially, comment to me about how time has changed.
Mhm.
They can't keep their focus on mundane tasks. Usually it's something to do with finances or something to do with general day to day things. They're sort of disconnecting from that and not understanding what's happening to them. It is what's happening, it's the energies, it's people waking up. That's one reason I wanted to do this class,
Mhm.
because people need it. People don't have a clue what is going on, and they're just sort of grasping at straws. So I think this class is a really good way for all of you to learn more in depth
Mhm.
about some of the things we talk about on the show.
Hi to our viewers who are watching right now. If you have questions or things that you want us to talk about, please put them in the comments section and we will do our best to answer them. For some people who are following me, it's really interesting. And we didn't talk about this before the show, but I'm going to go off on this tangent anyway. So I'm taking this Sing into Spring course and chanting lots of mantras, which I've chanted on and off in my life for the last probably 10 years anyway. But the scope of artwork that's coming from these classes has been very mind expanding, even for me. So it's just been really interesting.
I think it's a time where those of us who have studied this for a long time, been on this path forever,
Mhm.
um, we continue to learn throughout our lives. And I think it's a time of expansion. And I
Mhm.
think that's what's happening with your class. It's just taking things that were already there and expanding what you do with it. Um,
Well, in full disclosure, I'm always in the Akashic Records anyway. And so I knew about this lifetime for a long time. It's just not something I wanted to revisit for a long time, but this was the time that I had to revisit it.
yeah.
And this was the way that they told me would be the, I guess, least threatening or least destructive way for me to bring back all of this knowledge and all of these memories. And so it's always interesting to me how things come about.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people feeling like their lives have fallen apart. And I've said that many times. My life completely was obliterated. My life now is nothing like what it was, even just a couple of years ago. And that goes along with it.
Mhm.
When you're doing, and rituals are so important. And I'm not talking about, pull out the spirit board and, that's not a ritual, that's idiocy. But anyway, anything you
Only
do,
if you want to call in dark energies, play with
yeah,
the Ouija board.
that's a great way to do that. Um, but learning things that are expanding the possibilities, it's sort of creating ahead of schedule
Mhm.
is the way to look at it, because things will fall away. And if you're working on moving forward and you're working on letting go, which so many people are, you need to realize when you're saying, I am letting go of this, I am bringing new stuff in, you're really going to let go of stuff. And you're really going to bring stuff in. Your words are so important. Your intention is so important. And I've gotten so many calls from people saying, I don't understand what's happening. And that's what's happening. People are wanting to learn things that they never were interested in before. I spoke to some people last night about paranormal stuff, and only to find out both of these people had been experiencing things their entire lives.
Mhm.
And they never looked at it as paranormal. It was just their lives. There was nothing weird about it. There was nothing scary about it. It was just always there. And it wasn't until they started doing some different kinds of things in their house that all of a sudden they invited darkness in. And they're like, well, how did that happen? These ghosts have always been here. We've always been okay. How did that happen? Well, because you invited them in. And I think, and you and I talked about this years ago when I was working to get rid of any obstacles that was keeping me from living the life I was supposed to live. And my entire world fell apart. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I asked for.
Mhm.
Maybe that's not the way I envisioned it, but that's certainly the way it happened. And I think today, so many people are waking up
Mhm.
that maybe you're doing some things that you might not want to do. Um, it- and, we talked about this is my tangent. We talked about this before the show, how so many people watch these ghost hunting shows or paranormal investigating shows, and they think, oh, well, that's easy. I just download some software and I can capture EVPs on my phone. Yeah, you can. But you know what you're also doing? You're inviting in whoever wants to talk to you from wherever they're at.
Mhm.
And as often as it's benevolent spirits, it's also malicious spirits. Can't talk.
Mhm.
Um, what they leave out on these shows, and I know a lot of these people doing them, they leave out the prayers and the rituals and the incense and the saging themselves. And they leave out all of these pre-investigation rituals that every paranormal investigator does. So when you're at home and you're thinking, I've talked to ghosts my whole life, here, let me pull out a spirit board and we're going to, light some candles and hold a seance, you've skipped a step.
Mhm.
You've skipped a lot of steps. And the same can be said for the people waking up right now. You cannot go from 0 to 60. There are a lot of little steps you're missing.
Mhm.
And so many people are, well, I've started meditating, therefore I'm better than the person over there who's never done it. No. The first lesson that I was taught is you are no better than anyone else. This is about humility. This is not about competing with anyone except yourself. So if you're out there and you've read a couple of books and you've gone to a couple of classes and you've bought some crystals and you've bought a bunch of candles and you think you are a guru, you're not. You're not. That's my soapbox. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that a little knowledge can be dangerous.
Very.
And I think that that's what you're kind of alluding to.
Yep.
And of course, people aren't going to give away all their secrets about how they do things on a TV show because then they won't have their job anymore. So, I think that you just have to be really careful with your intention and what you're trying to do. And to realize, and I think it's a bigger concept, is sometimes everybody needs help.
Yeah.
And it's okay to ask for help, even if it's metaphysical stuff or
Yep.
spiritual stuff or paranormal stuff. Sometimes you can get in a lot of trouble by trying to do things you don't know how to do yet.
Or trying to do things by yourself.
Mhm.
There, uh, I've seen so many times when people have gotten themselves in a little bit of trouble because they're in over their head. You
Mhm.
know, there are some things you don't have to do by yourself. You can call for backup. And it seems like humanity has sort of devolved into that we're not all one anymore, where this person's over here and that one's over there and that one's over here. And never shall they intermingle. And that has done a huge disservice to
Mhm.
humanity as a whole. You have to realize we need each other. You know, you can't live life completely by yourself,
Mhm.
at least not and be functional. It's important that people realize as much. And the horrible thing happened again, and once again on social media people are at each other's throats. And what people don't realize is the more attention you give, there's your orb, the more attention you give to those negative things that happen, or a negative entity you've come across, or a negative person who's infiltrated your life, the more you're going to attract those things.
Mhm.
And if you really want to learn about any of this,
Mhm.
there are avenues for you to do that. I really wish people
Is that where
would.
you plug our class again?
Oh, we can plug our class again. We can teach you that now. Not where I was going, but it fit. Hey, uh, I've always said that every store that sells a Ouija board, it should come with a list, a set of instructions for why you should not be buying that. Um, unless you are very well trained and very centered and very protected, and you know how to call in the protection, and you know what you're doing. They're very dangerous things.
Mhm.
I witnessed that firsthand last night for the umpteenth time,
Mhm.
is people playing with things they really don't understand. And you can cause a lot of damage, mostly to yourself, but also to everyone around you.
An important point.
It's just that little bit of knowledge thing, like you said. So, one of the things that I've had people ask me about, and I wanted to talk about today, is I've had 3 different people message me on Facebook. What is a mandala? What is the purpose? Where did they come from? Why should I care about them? They're pretty pictures, but are they something in addition to
No,
that?
they're
Short
just
answer, no, that's all they are.
sorry, I couldn't resist. Mandala is a Sanskrit word meaning wheel or circle. And they actually are all through nature and architecture. And basically, well, at least the mandalas that I create, I can't speak for all mandalas, but they're to unlock unconscious parts of ourselves and bring them into the consciousness. So mine are probably a little bit more specific. I know we've talked about this, and when I started drawing them 20 years ago, I couldn't really call them energy portals because no one knew what that was yet. But I could probably change the name to that now. We're multidimensional portals. Some people travel. I'll never forget. I had this guy from England call me, and he's like, "I found your mandala online, and when I looked at it, my entire room dissolved." He's like, "I've never experienced anything like that before." Okay, has your room reappeared?
Are you suspended in some state of space? Yeah.
So, I mean, Jung talks a lot about mandalas and what they mean, and it really is everything in the universe has a frequency and a vibration, and everything is translated into symbols in our brain. Even letters are symbols. So when the mandala has certain patterns, certain colors, things like that, it carries a certain frequency, vibration, and signature. And when you look at it, depending on where you are in your journey, you're going to see different things. So somebody who's not very open looks at them and says they're really pretty. Other people who are probably further on their journeys, like, oh my God, you know what happened when I looked at this for a while, and things like that. So, I mean, neither is right or wrong. They can just be really pretty pictures too. It's just how you use it and what you do with it. I have a friend who meditates with them. Like, I've turned some of them into discs and she holds them when she meditates. Um, so it's just really interesting. And I've told this story before, but when my mom was really sick in the hospital and almost died, I filled her hot. She was septic, and if we gotten her to the hospital 2 hours later, they said she wouldn't have made it. But so I filled her room with a lot of healing mandalas, and everyone on the staff in the hospital was fascinated by them. And she was clear in 2 weeks, and they're like, "How is that even possible?" With how sick she was. There was no sign of infection after 2 weeks.
I think that plays into intention
Mhm,
well because you have or you had at that time a very clear intention about what you wanted to happen. And, it kind of, I don't know why that reminded me of it, but I used to volunteer and do Reiki
mhm,
on patients at a hospital. And one woman had also sepsis, and she was clear within a month. And another person in the hospital didn't work. She swears it didn't work for her. And I think that was because she didn't believe it. Whereas the first woman, who was actually sicker,
mhm.
actually got well because she was, oh, thank you so much. I see the colors. I feel all this. And sometimes we overlook that fact. Sometimes it's not only our intention, but as a healer, it's also the person you're working on's intention.
Mhm.
And if there is no belief and there is no faith, then you really have a very weak intention and it may not work for you. But that's another thing I think that people don't understand.
Mhm.
You can sit there all day long and say it's my intention to get well, but if behind that, but I don't believe it's going to work, or hey, we'll see what happens, or all of those things will undermine your intention.
And it's interesting because when she would get discharged, because I did it every time she was in the hospital, and she was in and out of the hospital a lot, I would always leave the pictures for the staff, and they would get into it's like, "No, I want this one. No, I want this one." It was always really interesting to see which ones resonated with them. I cleared them first before I gave it to them, but I wonder how many pictures are still in that hospital.
Probably several, I would guess. um, you know I did chakra symbols
Mhm,
when I was volunteering at this hospital. And I know someone who just went to work at that hospital. And they called me and said, "You don't work here.
mhm.
Why is your name on these pictures?" And they were still there. So I would bet your mandalas are still there. When people find something they resonate with, they kind of try to hold on to it.
Yeah, it's just always interesting to me.
I think it's fascinating the way people react to certain things.
Mhm.
My first book came out in 2014.
What was the name of your first book?
When on the road to enlightenment, don't forget to take out the trash.
And where can people get your book?
It's on Amazon. Thank you. Um, but there were things that I wrote in there
Mhm.
that recently I saw on a Facebook meme. And I was like, wait a minute. And I looked into it and I knew this person.
Mhm.
And she said, that sounded like you, but I saw it somewhere else and it didn't have your name on it. And I'm like, how much of what I've written previously
Mhm.
is floating out there somewhere? But it's interesting when someone sends me, and this happened recently too, someone sent me something I did, a poster I did in 2015 promoting that first book. And I read it without realizing what it was. And I went, wow, that's really deep. I'm like, oh, I wrote that. But, a lot of what I write is channeled. So,
Yeah, I've had the same experience where I'll go onto Facebook and I'll see my mandalas, people's like logos, and I'm like,
mhm.
huh. That's really interesting. No one asked me. So now I watermark them. So even if they use them, you can't see I make my name really light across the middle because I
Right.
don't want it to distract from the image, but they're all watermarked now. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. And I learned to put my name on things that I write because that's what had happened. It didn't occur to me. And this is how trusting I was in 2014 is that I wrote this and I'm like, well, I'm writing this. It came from my Facebook page. Obviously, people are going to know it's for me. Nope, people will steal it. So lesson learned. But it is interesting.
Everything is always interesting. Now, if I could only have that attitude at work, my life would be so much better.
And I think we've talked about this before. I I found in the last quote unquote job I had, um, things got progressively worse, and I felt progressively unappreciated, used. At some days I came home and I was like, I've been beaten up all day long. What is with that? And it got worse and it got worse and it got worse until one day the wrong person said the wrong thing. And I said, I've had enough. Bye. And I walked out and I never went back. In fact, they probably still owe me money because I just never went back. I was like, nope, not doing an exit interview. I don't owe you anything. I'm done. And that's what happens in life when you are awake and your guides are sitting there going, this way, this way, this way. And you're like, no, I'm making a left. And that's what happens. It gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. I saw the flash.
Was there a huge flash of light, or am I just imagining things?
No, I saw that. Uh, but there's your sign. I, it will get worse until a change is made, whatever that change may be, but it's building to a change. So get ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. God only knows what's going to happen. And my Akashic records, but they won't tell me.
Yeah, they don't tell me any either.
Well, they can't, for those people who aren't familiar with the Akashic records, depending on what your belief system is, because I've never tried to make anyone believe anything that they're not open to.
Right.
So to me, the Akashic records are your books of life, and they're kept in a library, so to speak, and everything that you've ever done in every lifetime and will do in future lifetimes is written. However, if you do have an Akashic record reading, which I'm blessed enough to be able to do those, they won't give you any information that's going to interfere with your free will.
Yep.
So it's always interesting to me. I'll never forget the first Akashic record reading I had. I of course asked two questions. I'm like, was I killed by a guillotine and did I die in a gas chamber in World War II? And the person who was reading the records is like, they never answer those questions. And then she's like, yes. She's like, I can't believe they answered those questions. But then I said, I know why they answered them, because if they didn't answer those questions, even if they had said no, that didn't happen, as long as it was answered, I would trust the rest of the information that was. I'm very skeptical sometimes. So she's like, I've never had that happen before. I'm like, welcome to my world. And then something that she said in that reading, and this is going back 20 years ago, I didn't understand it till about 3 years ago. Because in that Akashic record reading, I'm going to get a little woo woo metaphysical right now. I had this image of me swimming underwater, and my hands were phosphorus and glowed and could open all these gates underwater. And I didn't understand at the time that I was seeing Atlantis, and a bunch of other things. But it's just really interesting. It took me 20 years to go, oh, that's what that was.
Yeah.
So just keep some records, or, because sometimes it takes a long time for it to come for full circle of what things really mean,
Yeah.
and different levels of what things really mean. And we're going to talk about that in our class as well.
Yeah. Levels. Yeah. There's different things that you can do to reinforce your intentions or what you're learning or what you want to learn, um, that I call levels. Um, One of the things that I want to mention about Akashic Records and Akashic readings, I am of the firm belief through my experience that you will only receive the information that you are ready to receive.
Yes.
Um, so many people have told me things about different readers, not only Akashic records, but different things. And well, I didn't get the information I'm looking for. And then when I went in to get the information they were looking for, they told me, we can't tell them yet. They are not ready.
Because it will interfere with free
With
will.
free will. And sometimes people don't want to understand that. But you have to be humble enough to realize there are some things you're not ready to know yet.
Mhm.
They're just are. There's things that none of us are ready to know yet, but some of us still do. Um, the other thing about Akashic record reading, I've talked to a bunch of people recently who want to know how to do this. And as with anything else, you need to learn, you need to study it, you need to practice. And you have to understand that there are some things that as a reader, you are not ready to see either.
Mhm.
And sometimes if you push it, you will get pushed back. And I've known a couple of people that were terrified of a reading they did. Yes, it was my reading. I,
Yeah, I was going to say we've talked about that, and then I opened your Akashic records about
yeah,
2 months ago. Now was it?
yeah, something like that, two or three.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I think that you have to be secure in who you are and how you get information. Otherwise, a lot of things can come across in ways that you can't. And I think the biggest thing is to just report and say what you're getting. Because my experience with even people doing my Akashic records or other readings like that, they're trying to interpret it
yeah,
to make sense to them. And I just want the information. I don't want you to interpret it. It might not make sense to you, but if they say, there's a red ball here, and the person's like, "Well, the red ball is symbolic for blah, blah." I'm like, "Just
right,
tell me there's a red ball that might have significant meaning for me."
right. Right. And I had someone doing a reading for me that absolutely scared herself. And she doesn't even speak to me anymore. In fact, she tells people I'm scary, but it was something she saw. And I think I've talked about it before, where sometimes a black horse is only a black horse.
Mhm.
Um, People are always shocked to know that I go to people for readings as well. We all do.
Mhm.
I don't know of a reader who doesn't get readings from time to time. But like Gail was saying, do not try to interpret someone else's symbols. In my experience, I had a reader trying to interpret what a black horse meant, and it was just my horse at that time. So don't read into too much. If you're in doubt, just tell someone what it is you're seeing.
Mhm. One of our viewers wants to know, do your Akashic records have info on all of your spirit guides? Yes, but that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily get it. Again, it's everything that you've done in every lifetime and everything that you're going to do in every lifetime. All right, so let's blow some people's. There's no such thing as time and space. Everything is happening
Right.
simultaneously. All past lives are happening right now, and all future lives are happening right now. And when you
Time is a
start
human
talking,
construct. Yep.
it really confuses people. So also, so it can change, right? Because decisions that you make, and that's what I always tell people. This is the information right now with where you are and the choices that you're making and your current trajectory. If you
Right.
call me back 3 months later and made very different decisions, it's going to be a very different reading. In the Akashic Records, like people like, I want to know about my past lives. So I'll give them Usually one or two come up. They're like, well, what are the rest of them? I'm like, I can't tell you that yet. You're not ready for that information, but well, yeah, but they told me I can't tell you yet.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's about being, what's the word I'm looking for? Respectful. Because, yeah, I could go ahead and say, well, I saw this, but they said this person's not ready for this. They're showing me in context of where the person is right now.
Right.
And then I'll often say, well, there's two or three different outcomes. It depends on the choices that you're going to make. And they're like, well, I want to go this way. Again, can't answer that. You have to decide on one of those three for yourself and see where that takes you.
And what usually happens
Mhm.
is no matter which direction you go, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be anyway.
Yeah, it's just different paths.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, I take the scenic route.
I
You
take the
know,
scenic road.
I've talked about it all the time too. I argue with my guides. If they tell me do this, I'm going to go, okay, I'll do that eventually. But first, I'm going to go over here. And you do end up exactly where you're supposed to be. So it's not like you can really make a wrong turn. You can just choose different experiences that might not be as fun or as pleasurable down the road as if you had taken another path. It's it happens that way. It just, no matter what you do, you're going to end up where you're supposed to be,
Mhm.
and you will end up looking back eventually and seeing how all the pieces and the parts fit together and how it would have fit together a different way, but it still would have fit together had you done a different route.
Like I said, slow boat, hence the 20 years to figure out what that meant from my first Akashic record reading. I forgot what I was doing, but one day I think I was drawing a mandala about mermaids and stuff. It's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just
That's like
interesting.
my realization with having Ganesh help me remove obstacles a couple of years back. It's like, oh, okay, I got it now. Makes perfect sense now.
Yeah, and I just drew the Ganesh mantra mandala last night, which was really interesting. The Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. That energy was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong energy.
Mhm.
But I think any of the deities whose primary purpose is to remove something,
Mhm.
whether it's an obstacle, whether it's whatever it is, Shiva, let's just destroy everything and start over. They're very powerful entities.
Mhm.
The same thing can be said with people who play around with spirit boards. You will find your reaction times if you have a benevolent spirit, your grandmother, a long lost aunt, friend, whatever, their movements are going to be slow and smooth. If you are talking with something that is dark, we'll just use dark, their movements are going to be quick and jerky. And that's anytime I have seen people playing with, I do not do that anymore. I learned my lesson several hundred years ago. Um, you will find that every time. So kind of pay attention to that. Someone recently started playing around with pendulums. There's so many different ways you can use tools for divination. It's just ridiculous how many ways there are. This particular person is one of my Reiki students, and we popped up in someone's Facebook feed. That's interesting. And for whatever reason, she decided to play with a pendulum. And she says, I don't understand. I'm getting answers really, really, really fast.
Mhm.
And it's moving in a really, really kind of jerky manner. And I'm like, put it down, soak it in salt, smudge yourself. And she couldn't understand why. until she calmed down and
Hmm.
we talked through it. But I think that's why people get tricked so often, is because it's very easy to open the wrong door or the wrong portal.
Hmm.
And people think, yay, I've been successful. I've contacted something from the other side.
So it's really interesting because, we've talked about how, as we've done this podcast, how things have changed. Tonight we had someone from England who was live with us, and now we have someone from Portugal who's live with us. And it's so grateful that people are finding us and connecting with us. So,
Yes, absolutely.
I know let me try that again in complete sentences. I know there were some things tonight that you wanted to talk about.
Um, one of the things that I see repeatedly,
Mhm.
and it really gets under my skin when I see advertisements on social media for different classes that
Mhm.
are combining spirituality with magic. Um, Bad idea.
Mhm.
When you're working on a spiritual path, and if you haven't learned this yet, you should learn it right now. You are working with guides, with angels, with deities, with the God of your choice, goddesses of your choice, whoever it is that is 100% divine love and light.
Mhm.
You're working with them. You are not commanding them. You are not taking control. Trust me, I learned this when I was a child. You do not know how to control God. You may think you're doing it right. You may think you're working with them. But if you're using a ritual that says, I'm manifesting this now, or I command this to be true now, or I am, demanding of this deity that you do this, that's not a spiritual path. I've said this before, I'm predominantly pagan, but every religion has its virtues.
Mhm.
And whatever you believe for you is the right way for you to believe. Just because someone is not of that religion, we talked about Ganesh.
Mhm.
I've worked with Ganesh. I am not Hindu. I'm not Buddhist. These deities of 100% pure love and light will work with anyone if you ask them and you treat them respectfully.
Mhm.
But the minute you start trying to cast spells to create something to happen, or my favorite are the people who work with chaos. They want to create chaos in certain ways so that this, and this will happen. Kind of like using a voodoo doll. I'm going to do this so that, and that happen.
Mhm.
That's not spirituality. That is trying to take control, and it will not work,
Mhm.
or it will work in a way that is not for your best good, or it'll work for a way that causes a lot of damage to you or in your life. Don't do that. If you see someone talking about um, using magic with spirituality, that's a huge red flag. That's not what it's about. What it's about is we are all one,
Mhm.
and we should love and respect each other, including those deities. And if you are loving and respecting the deities, the entities that you are working with, the guides you're working with, the angels you're working with, you're not going to try to order them around and force something to happen. So think about being as loving and as respectful as you can be, and you will find they're much easier to work with.
So, you know how a couple weeks ago this huge guy came in on my left side while we were doing.
Mhm.
So today I have one about 3 feet behind me,
You do.
and I really want to turn around and see who it is, but I won't. I have a feeling it came in when there was that huge flash of light. I just was busy talking and wasn't paying attention.
One of the things that is happening a lot, and I know it happens with you, it's happened for me a lot, is we're getting beings from other dimensions, other planets, other solar systems, and that's happening more and more and more. When you are just starting out, it's really easy to confuse those different beings, particularly if you're clairvoyant, you actually see them, because some of them are quite bizarre looking. I'm
Yeah,
just going to say bizarre looking.
different than what we're accustomed to seeing. And
Right,
sometimes we've seen a lot of pictures of deities, but that might not be how they present themselves to you.
right.
So I think there's so much information and things that people need to just have more of an awareness about. I won't even say understanding or knowledge. I think it's just more of an awareness. So, is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up tonight?
No, you should check out our class. Ask for more information. We
So,
will
how
be
can people, if they want to connect with you, how can they get to you?
the easiest way, honestly, and everybody on the planet, probably throughout the galaxy, has my email. So it's Fitzgerald, TOO, at yahoo.com. So that is the easiest way. I do look through my emails every day. And if you want information, just reach out.
And then, if you want to ask me for the more information, you can reach me at gail.alexander1244 at gmail.com. So somebody just said that they had a healing session with a Palladian, which is very the Palladians from this seven planets of the seven sisters are healing. They're fifth dimensional beings who are very healing. Them, the Octurians, and the Syrians are all very healing. And depending on people's belief system, dolphins and whales have been linked to the Palladians, the Syrians, and the Octurians. I find the dolphins to be the Palladians and the Syrians, and then the whales are the Octurians. And they're here to remind us that we have amazing abilities to heal ourselves. And I always think about it interesting is they're in the ocean, and ocean is very much like space. Like this is just this vastness. So
Right.
of course that's where they would leave themselves for us and to be in a different shape that wouldn't, scare us or anything. So perfectly normal to have visitors. The more open you become, the more spirit, energy, beings come in to help you. So hope that answers your question. If you have more questions about it, just reach out to me and I will go ahead and answer them. So thank you, everybody. We will see you guys all again next week. If there's things that come up that you want us to talk about on the show next week, shoot us an email. Because now you have both of our emails. There's no excuse. So reach out to us and please subscribe to the channel, like the videos. Hate to do
Share
that,
it.
but that's what you need to do for YouTube. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.